What is going on, y'all? Happy Wednesday show. Happy Wednesday to all y'all out there. Sorry, my voice is a little hoarse. I don't know why. It feels like I'm coming down with a cold, but I don't feel sick. So, number one thing I want to bring up before we start diving into things. I don't know if some of you saw my video from yesterday. The YouTube gods and the alphabet agencies did not like my last two videos. So apparently I'm walking on thin ice right now. So I'm going to be really cryptic about certain topics here on YouTube. I'm not really trying to be. I'm not trying to be that guy who's all cryptic for no reason, but I really don't have a choice right now. So what are you going to do? I am probably going to be uploading two versions of the videos from now on, one for YouTube and one for Rumble. So, a couple of announcements real quick. Jake knows nothing. I'm going to be on his podcast Friday night, and he's going to be hopping on the Saturday show with Joe and I this Saturday. Jake was a guy, he has a channel on YouTube. I will link his channel in the description down here. He did, I believe, it was a 90 to 100 gram mushroom trip. And honestly, that is the most heroic dose I think I've ever heard. The most heroic. Even myself, I think the most I've had wet was 15 grams. And that was just a lot. That is something you don't want to repeat on an everyday basis. So, but he'll be coming on. We'll be sharing experiences. I went ahead and sent him my DMT experience, which I actually never got a chance to upload on either channel. So I will be uploading that probably tonight as well as this is processing. But we've had a very similar experience, two different compounds. I mean, mushrooms is a form of DMT. It's 4-hydroxy-DMT. So you can get to that breakthrough state. You most certainly can on mushrooms. It just requires a hell of a lot more. So he'll be hopping on. Still hopping on my friend Matthew Elliott Beckman's podcast tonight as far as I know. We will see what happens. I have not really gotten any clarification yet, but we'll see what happens. So without further ado, let me hop into this real quick. I got some things I want to talk about today, and honestly, the first thing I'm going to bring up is a video from Tim Pool on Timcast IRL. And, you know, he's, in my opinion, he goes a little bit farther than I do when it comes to talking about certain topics that the YouTube gods and the alphabet agencies don't want you talking about. So he toes an even thinner line than me. And that's where I get the theory that, you know, Joe and I in our Saturday shows, we talk about this group of people called the Invisible College. They're the ones that help fabricate this reality and keep it the way it is. And I believe there are divided factions because some of this Invisible College wants us to wake up. And I think Tim Pool might be a member that's meant to drip feed because he talks about the simulation, he talks about NPCs, things like that, the simulated reality, and he even goes a little bit farther than we have, and he's more well known. So this is kind of why I'm like laughing about YouTube taking my videos down. So without further ado, let's get into it. So here we go.
Pfizer's bivalent shot and strokes. The agency said the surveillance signal is very unlikely to represent a true clinical risk and said they will continue to recommend the vaccine. So this obviously has a lot of people worried.
You knew what the tell was. It was when the number one thing Republicans were lobbying for was...
Now wait, I don't know if y'all heard that. Despite seeing the possible link between the thing they're talking about and strokes, they still recommend it anyways. Here we go.
Were were immunity protections and liability protections for the vaccine manufacturers. I mean, you knew at the very beginning this was going to be an issue because they had to lay out all of their immunities and protections.
And because YouTube was censoring anybody who brought that up.
How are you still on YouTube? Like,
Bro, were we just not talking about this? How is he still on fucking YouTube? That's why I think he's working with them. Not saying he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's not for us, but I think he's working with them. So let's go.
My thread.
I'm telling you, man.
We argue with each other. Like, if I say anything about COVID, for the most part, Tim will be like, no, and then we'll like go at it, and we never make definitive claims. We very, very rarely make definitive claims about things we don't have proof of.
It's basically just like, look, we're reading Politico here. You know what I mean? Hey, man, if YouTube's got a problem with Politico, the BBC, CNN, all reporting this, well, then we're all effed.
Well, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene got zapped off of social media for saying that if you were really overweight, that was probably a bad idea vis-a-vis COVID, and exercise would be helpful. And then, you know, lo and behold, you later see CNN and the CDC accept those positions.
Crowder.
You know, and I find that really funny because anybody who's been on, I mean, even just a common sense person or person who has common sense and critical thinking skills knows that exercise and preventative medicine statistically lowers your chances of getting sick and statistically lowers your chances of having chronic illness. This is one thing I preach a lot. I know I have some new people who just started following me too. Thanks again. If you do like, subscribe, come check me out. But health and fitness is something I really dig into a lot on this show, a little bit more so than I do on the Saturday show with Joe, because I'm a big believer in health and fitness being one of the biggest acts of resistance you could do right now. I mean, I was doing it before it was an act of resistance, but now it is, because the healthier you are, the more you take care of your body and mind, the less reliant you are going to be on the becoming ever more corrupt healthcare system. Let's continue.
Steven Crowder got a strike for citing the CDC.
Yeah.
It's,
But today's pretty big, especially with this FDA CDC news that almost everyone in the corporate media is talking about. The British Broadcasting Company even had a cardiologist on that they're getting criticized for having on, a doctor, a mainline professional that was talking about the larger concerns when it came to this, of course, shot and larger health effects that are being correlated here. I know Florida is investigating that right now under Ron DeSantis, but I see this as
Joe
being,
Ledipo.
but I see this as being a very key divisive issue, especially when it comes to the Republican primaries, especially when it comes to the possibility of DeSantis and Trump kind of going at each other. How do you see that larger battle unfolding, and do you think there's going to be any accountability against Big Pharma for a lot of their kind of egregious actions and a lot of their data that they're hiding from the American people?
Okay, so what he just said, I'm going to go ahead and bring the camera up a little bit more so we can talk about this. So this, to me, is one of the things we are kind of that's being used to troll us into awakening. Now, what I mean troll us into awakening, for some of my new people, I'll touch on it briefly. That faction of that invisible college that wants us to wake up, they're doing it in a mockingly, painfully obvious way. So what I mean is, I've said it before, I promise this will be my last time. Elon firing Ligma Johnson from Twitter. Okay, another big one too is the whole gas stove and gas vehicle gas lighting. That's a really big symbolism. I mean, dude, I saw that symbolism instantaneously when this was supposedly big news and supposedly big media. I was like, oh, well, they're letting us symbolically know that they are insanely gaslighting us right now. And this is, I hope maybe this might be what happens in March. Maybe they might find out that this vaccine was rushed, not tested very well, and it was lied about. And if that becomes common knowledge, ooh, you know, I still think there'll probably be some people who deny it, or some people who still make excuses for it. But I think the vast majority of the people who got the vax are going to be like awakened. I really hope so. That's best case scenario. So let's go ahead and pop it up one more time. We're not going to watch the whole video because I'm on a little bit of a time crunch this morning, but I will post the video in the links of the description. Go check out Tim's channel. He's actually, like he said, I don't know how he's still on YouTube. Same with a couple other guys. Like I said, I think they're on the side of that invisible college that wants us to wake up, and because they're affiliated with that organization, the quote unquote administrative sector, they are allowed to have platforms and speak the way that they want. So.
No. I mean, there are multiple big pharma lobbyists for every single member of Congress. You want to talk about a special interest that has a death grip on the political process, it is big pharma. And I don't know that the vax mandate in the 2024 primaries will still be like at the top of the issue matrix. I think this economy is about to go through a serious contraction.
Yeah.
I think that people are going to see their 401ks experience real problems. I think that as interest rates rise, and that has such an impact on our nation's debt service, and how far the dollar can go. Purchasing power, business confidence, consumer confidence. I think like that's going to be the issue matrix along with the border in 2024. And a lot of places are getting rid of the vax mandate. I mean, I'm grateful that the Department of Defense is ditching the vax mandate. The fight's not over. We got to reinstate people who saw their lives ruined. But I don't see it being a big.
Yeah, you still need a vaccine to enter the United States if you're not a citizen.
You need one to go to. So tomorrow I'm on CNN. I'm on Smirkanish's show. So I was going to come into the studio, do the shtick there, and they're like, oh, produce your vaccine, your booster. No were you triple boosted? Did you get a booster this?
So one thing I'm going to say about that whole thing is I was fortunately not afraid of all that during the time because I knew, and I knew somehow I was going to get my hand on a fake vax card. I did. And I supplied others with them because I'm not going to say how I got it, and I'm not going to say who I supplied it to. So go ahead and try and, it's not even considered an official document at this point. So, because it was the most unconstitutional thing to mandate that. And then you have Neil deGrasse Tyson and people like that going, well, it's not about you. Well, this is why it upsets me that a lot of our credible scientists, a lot of people who are supposed to be figureheads of the scientific community are on a narrative as opposed to data and statistical evidence. So, for that virus, I'm not going to say the name, if you are under the age of 70, you have a 99.2 chance percent of survival. Over 70 is 98. Only, and basically in a nutshell, we are talking only people with serious illnesses, morbidities, and pulmonary diseases were the ones who were the most risk for this. And we are talking at this point the amount of people that were affected, either had the illness, passed away, was 0.050 of the United States population. And those statistics alone, I don't know, kind of scream red flag to me. And like I said, I will continue to kind of beat this horse dead a little bit because I don't want y'all forgetting it. I don't. You guys cannot fall for it again the next time, especially with me around. So, let's get back to it. Let's do...
This morning, do you have a negative test? And I'm like, I'm not doing any of that stuff, so I've got to shoot the segment remote. But then every time I see like my Republican colleagues now on set in the studio. I'm like,
You know.
We had on the Krasensteins the other day. They're Democrats. And I asked them if they thought the economy was good, fairly good, bad, and they said somewhere between fairly bad and fairly good. And if you look at the polling, the plurality of people, the majority think it's fairly bad or worse. 40% say very bad. So we got the story about Joe Biden and the documents in his garage. Meanwhile, it's like $9 in some places for a carton of eggs. You know, milk is really expensive. I think the average person, when it comes to the issue matrix, like you're mentioning, is just sitting there wondering why cabbage costs $7.
yeah, I mean, I looked at the little head of cauliflower that we got at the grocery store. Like, the shrinkflation is real as well. And we were talking before we went live just about how silly I think, like, the archivist disputes are. Like I said in September, probably every one of these presidential, vice presidential libraries.
So one thing I do want to talk about, and we actually have an article about it that we're going to talk about here in a sec also. The inflationary thing is a real thing. And that is something from the world stage that a lot of us are going to get roped into. And the way I've been seeing it for a while, I don't know if y'all have noticed that, you know, for over the past years, this is a good way to see it. Now, actually, I'll link American Homestead. They're a great channel. He talked about it, and he laid it out really good. So you go to the store and you buy a box of tissues. It's got 200 tissues in it, right? And, you know, you get it for that certain price. But then you go back like a month later or so, and now there's only 190 tissues in the box, but it's still the same price. I've noticed as of lately that all of the prices of everything have gone up pretty dramatically. In fact, I was kind of feeling it last weekend a little bit when I just kind of went to the grocery store to grab a couple things, and a few things were $100. And I remember a time where for $100 you could feed a whole family. And this is only going to continue, y'all. This is kind of like a last ditch effort stranglehold event that most certainly will occur, because like Joe and I talked about in the Saturday show, we don't even know what's holding this economy up anymore. We don't. Like, I mean, the debt to GDP ratio back even back in 2017, 2018 was way over ratio, and that's a big thing. I mean, we were way higher than England was in World War II when they had their economic collapse, way higher, and that's just kind of, you know, it's an interesting anomaly how our dollar, our currency, and our financial system is held up. So let's watch a little bit more of this, and then we're going to dive into some of the other things I would like to talk about today.
And think tanks in America is out of some sort of technical compliance with the Records Keeping Act. And for my constituents who have to drive a long way to work and are looking at gas prices, who, if you want to buy a used car today, I mean, good luck. I mean, I don't know if you want to drive them or bronze them after you get them based on how much you have to pay. The housing market, rent being up so high. I mean, already we made it where millennials can barely afford to buy a house, so many are forced into rental life, and now what's happening with the cost of rent. You know, those are things that I think, like, people really think about. And you turn on cable news and it's all about, like, there's an 11th document that they have found in Joe Biden's convertible's glove compartment, and we're supposed to clutch our pearls and act like that's...
Well, this is what I'm talking about, guys. It's a fucking stage. It's a world stage. I mean, what was it? I forgot which page was doing the meme where that was Memology 101. I'll have to link it. They were making fun of how The View was completely rationalizing Biden's possession of these classified documents, and Donald Trump was a piece of shit for doing exactly the same thing. Now, y'all know my stance on the two-party system. I'm not in favor of either party. I find the irony and the hypocrisy is just what makes me believe even more that this is a stage. These are not real people. These are actors, you guys. It's it is what it is. So I'm going to bring up one of Ben's morning shows today too. Ben, if you're watching this, or anybody, man, Much love, brother. I hope everything's going well with you. I know people need to watch the playlists. That's why I did. Hold on one second. I'm going to bring up his morning show for y'all. You know, there's not a guy that I can't tell you I think is just a damn good person aside from him. And Douglas Thomas, I still want you on the podcast. The only reason I did not bring up what you showed me when I was talking with him is we were having a little bit of technical difficulties throughout the whole experience. So, being that this was kind of a first big name for Joe and I on this podcast, this is why I did not want to exactly bring it up just yet. So, let's hope Mr. YouTube decides to load here. So, as he loads, I'm going to go ahead and minimize him. So one thing I'm going to talk about here is that I want to bring up is the solar storms and the magnetic activity here on the planet. If you feel kind of funky, you just have those days where just out of nowhere you feel like crap, you wake up, I mean you might have slept well, but you still feel kind of like crap, vice versa. It's probably because there's a geomagnetic storm happening. Now, I really like how Ben talked about it in our podcast, you know, how our body is basically electrical impulses and magnetic fields and things like that. And it works with our magnetic field on this planet. It's intertwined almost. And that's why a lot of people in a lot of the esoteric and spiritual traditions think that when the magnetic field weakens and there's a polar magnetic excursion, humans have the possibility of losing their memories. This can be you can take preventative action towards this by meditating and kind of building up your own life force energy using qigong and things like that. So let me go ahead and see if Mr. YouTube wants to load. Okay. So we got skip ads. Here we go. Let's check out Mr. Ben Davidson. This video is 4 minutes and 20 seconds long. I love it. Come on, YouTube. So, the one thing he's going to talk about in this video is there's a lot of sunspots going on right now. And with that comes ramped up activity. So that is another scenario, y'all, that is probably the most realistic of something that could occur here on this planet. Is it's most certainly a solar flare that could take out the power grid. Now, I'm an electrician. I work with infrastructure in the power grid. It is archaic, 100%. I mean, you see some of the old lines and the old substations that have probably been around. Well, I guess he doesn't want to load, so we're going to let him go. Sorry, Ben. I tried. I'm dealing with this kind of bullcrap here right now. Anyways, the sunspots that can create solar flares, they can definitely take down our power grid. They can take down our modern way of living, especially now with the weakened magnetic field. And smaller solar events are causing more intense geomagnetic storms. So go check out Ben's channel, especially try to map out when these solar storms are happening, and you can judge how you feel. And you know that that day you're going to need to just take it easy, because that's kind of what happens in these kind of situations. So All right, another thing I wanted to bring up real quick. Let me go ahead and shrink my camera, y'all. I don't want to be in the middle of the page now. All right. And, I think, and the reason why I'm using RT, all right, is I'm not saying I believe everything they say. I'm not saying they're a credible source of news. In order to find truth, you have to look at both sides. And that's why I do kind of give RT and Al Jazeera a look and kind of look at things like that when we come to talking about the world stage and all that. Because you need to see everybody's line of view in order to kind of formulate a educated guess or opinion on what the truth could be. So, let's take a look. We all knew this. Yeah, damn right we all knew this. COVID-related tech was exploited for mass surveillance, just as we were warned. Various governments across the world have co-opted digital tracing for use by police and intelligence services. Now, here's the thing, y'all. They want you to think that this just happened now, but no, it's been going on for a while. It's been going on, I would even say possibly before 9/11 at this point, because the surveillance state has been growing a long time. And new revelations show that the COVID pandemic has allowed for governments and big tech to expand their surveillance industrial complex that tightens the state's grip on thought and movement. Well, most definitely. A recent batch of Twitter International documents released by Elon Musk via journalist David Zweig on the platform itself reveals that one of the first meetings that the Biden administration requested with Twitter executives was on the topic of that virus and the things you take for the virus, and specific high-profile accounts that deviated from the official narrative. So, again, look at this, guys. I mean, it's just like, you look at, and that's one thing that just blew my mind, and that's why I did have to understand that this was a stage, because you have people ignoring the red flags that you have these trusted and credible doctors, years in the field, PhDs, beloved by their communities, getting fired because they didn't agree with a political narrative. He added that with the COOF, this bias bent heavily towards establishment dogmas and cited examples of various experts. You mean figureheads, quote-unquote experts. We've also learned from the previous Musk-approved Twitter file releases of the cozy relationship between government officials, including those working for the Pentagon, CIA, FBI, and big U.S. social outlets like Twitter, which routinely cooperated on various government priorities and agendas ranging from framing foreign wars to promoting certain narratives about geopolitical competitors under the guise of fighting disinformation. You want to know what I find funny? Is this. They did not give a damn about misinformation or trying to stop misinformation until they had a narrative in place. This was really after 2012. Like I talk about it, 2012 was not the end of the world, you guys. It was the beginning of the simulated reality, the testing ground that we're all currently on right now. I do believe personally that this is what is going on. We're being tested as a human species. We're being tested as a human civilization to see if we are ready to go beyond what we are now. I mean, and like I said, you can look back at examples of life before 2012 and life after. I mean, just look at the world. So, what I think happened, now that I'm thinking about it and I can actually formulate this theory, is 2012, December 21st, 2012, was not the end of the world. It was the beginning of the test. And I don't know how long the test is supposed to last. I mean, if you think the 7 years of tribulation, I don't know, because if that began in 2012, it should have been well over by now. All I do know is we're entering the age of Aquarius. And yeah, that's what I think, man. I do think the simulated reality really took off in 2012. So it's only now, when most Westerners are jabbed, that taboos on scientific information and the true efficiency of the vaccines, particularly on new variants, associated side effects and risks like myocarditis, and the high protective value of post-infection immunity are being loosened and no longer routinely suppressed or vilified as dangerous fake news. Duh, man. Conspiracy theory first, truth 6 months later. Just like they do with war propaganda, the U.S. government and its Western allies went out of their way to manufacture consent. And they used the very same big tech platforms that were once the great hope of those seeking to break free from the more controlled corporate media. And the gatekeepers of those platforms, like those of Twitter, were far too keen to abide. I mean, dude, what was it? Rogan was talking about Howard Stern on his podcast on how like he went woke and he just like used to be the man. I mean, I remember when I was growing up and I listened to Howard Stern, bro. I wasn't technically allowed to listen to Howard Stern. I had to sneak watching his show and had to sneak listening to him because he was, according to parents at the time, was super inappropriate. But now, look at him, dude. He's turned into like this frail, scared little woke baby. And this just goes to show you, man, they're actors. They're actors. They have different roles that they play at certain times. And then, Stern used to be against the grain, and that was the role he had to play back then. But now he's playing the role of the conformist. He's playing the role of the guy following the narrative. And I've talked about this before in a few of my early episodes, that the spiritual divide that occurred between people during this whole incident was ridiculous, because the spiritual community got split. There were people like me who believe freedom is a very spiritual thing and having bodily autonomy is a very spiritual thing. And then there was other people too in the spiritual community that kind of decided to go and follow the narrative and kind of shame the rest of us for not doing it. So anyways, let's continue. Oh, let me straighten my camera. Hold on. And that's not all the pandemic has in common with other crises shamelessly exploited by governments. A new report by the Associated Press has found that the pandemic permitted the expansion of global surveillance. Well, go figure. With police in multiple countries using technologies and data to halt travel for activists and ordinary people, harass marginalized communities, and link the people's health information to other surveillance and law enforcement tools. They have been doing that for a while too. That's not new. I like how they like to portray this as like, oh, we just found out. But no, it's been going on for a while. So, basically, in a nutshell, y'all, what you thought they were going to do with all of these COVID measures, or what people call conspiracy theories about what they were going to do, is fact. It's true. It's true. So, this is the point I'm at. And I'm talking to all you regular people out there who maybe might, still kind of believe that the narrative is true and that what we're talking about is conspiracy. Dude, at this point, you got to take a look at it. And you got to be like they might be onto something. They might be onto something at this point, because even in Tim Pool's video, just now what they said, all right, on top of the article we just read, all right, things they were censoring people, taking down and banning people from social media for, they are now condoning and agreeing with. And you guys like to use the term conspiracy theorist, but here's the thing, and I brought this up in the Saturday show with Joe, I'll bring it up real quick again. Conspiracy theorist was a term used to discredit the people who questioned the official narrative of the Kennedy assassination. And what did we find out in 2016? The official narrative of the Kennedy assassination was a lie. So, you have to take that, and you have to understand that maybe some of these things you think are conspiracy theories might actually be happening. See what I'm saying? Human nature plays a part in this, y'all. I brought up ad nauseum that people in the United States of America automatically think somebody is absolved of all of their human condition and all of their human psychology when they get elected into office. They're not. If they were corrupt going in, they're going to stay corrupt while they're in. And, and that's why I always tell people, if the conspiracy involves large sums of money, government misinformation, and government cover-up, it's most likely true. 100%. And governments do not have to tell you what they don't deem a good thing to tell you. They only benefit themselves. I'm not going to get into my rant about how the common person looks at a government like it's some kind of godhead in our society, as well as, looking at Hollywood like it's some kind of godhead, and these people listen to these quotes from these Hollywood actors. And, bro, why the fuck are you listening to these people? Why? They are so removed from who you are in everyday life. They are. They do not have a regular life like you. They've sold their souls. So, without further ado, let's get to the last one for today. And then we're going to break down a couple more things. So, dang, y'all. I don't know what's going on with me. It's definitely, I don't have a fever. I don't feel sick, but I got a cough, my nose is runny, and my throat's a little sore. Who knows? But, alright. So, the looming debt ceiling crisis, right? This is something I truly believe is a very big thing that could occur. This is an event that we could honestly get pulled into on the world stage. Because even though each of us have our own subjective stage that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, our subjective stage is a part of the world stage. And we can play non-attachment the best we can, okay, by not watching mainstream media, by cooking your own meals, eating organic whole foods, by actually spending your free time bettering yourself, learning new things, and acquiring knowledge about the world around you. Okay? This is what I mean. Do not be reliant on this system. Think for yourself, feed yourself, work for yourself, do all of these things, because people today are so reliant on this system that when something like this is about to happen, you are going to be lost. We even talked about it last Saturday with the gaslighting, is you have to play non-attachment with the currency at hand right now. Okay, you do. This currency is not going to be around forever. It's not. And a lot of people in our society are obsessed with the dollar. They idolize it. They worship it. I have understood the dollar's place at this point in my journey, and I really think the best way that I can put it is that I participate as much as I need to. All right, you've heard me say it, and that's what I do. So let's take a look at the article. So we got the looming debt ceiling crisis is too big for the Fed to ignore. Look at this dude, bro. This guy doesn't even look like a human being. I mean, just look at his face. I swear they all are some kind of negative entities working at the Federal Reserve over there or something, man. There has to be, because I mean, you look at you look at some of the people that are affiliated with it, and they all, in some way, shape, or form, kind of look like Mr. Burns. Oh, there goes the cell phone alarm. Mr. Burns. So, let's talk about this real quick. Because that is my alarm that I need to be wrapping up soon. The economic facts have changed markedly since the Federal Reserve last met in mid-December. Not only is inflation decelerating in the context of a slowing economy, the risk of a government debt ceiling crisis as early as this summer has increased substantially. Now, I know a lot of my homies on the crypto tip and all that have been watching the financial market, and a lot of the people, I'm not a fan of crypto, I've already said that, but they've been watching the market, and everybody's talking about how 2023 is going to be a shitty financial year. So, and I saw a meme a while ago where they were talking about how the 1920s are practically repeating in the 2020s. And dude, honestly, man, look at it. I encourage you. So, we have to hope that its next meeting, January 31st to February 1st, the Fed will take note of these shifts. Maybe then it will change its mind about the need to further interest rate increases. Oof. Because the money they loaned us out of thin air, they want to increase the interest on that. Oh my God, what a scam this system is. Anyways, if not, we should brace ourselves for an unnecessary economic recession and a heightened financial market turbulence, most certainly. Last week's favorable consumer price report provided one indication that inflation is declining rapidly. It showed headline inflation had come down to 6.5% from its June peak of more than 9%. It also registered that over the past 3 months, the underlying inflation rate, excluding volatile energy and food prices, had come down to 3.25%. Sorry. And that is true, though. It is. You can look at it. Forward-looking indicators, meanwhile, suggest further substantial progress will be made in reducing inflation this year. It ain't gonna happen, bro. I think this is it. I think the Band-Aid they've been putting on can no longer be put on anymore. In response to a more than doubling in mortgage rates, housing costs, most certainly, which got 40% of the consumer price index, are now falling as the housing market's already in recession. Wage inflation is at 4.5%. Yeah, man. So this is, this is kind of a very big possible thing that could happen. So what I would encourage y'all to do is to each day become a little bit more less reliant on this system in one way, shape, or form. Take care of yourself. Be fit and healthy, number one. Number two, discipline your mind. Okay? Meditate. Use discernment with the information that you take in. Okay? Don't just look at the news and turn on the TV and take what they say as face value. A lot of you always want to go, what do they have, why would they lie? What do they have to lie about? And that's a whole other podcast for another time. So, damn y'all. Anyways, so, if you guys want that podcast, I'll give it to you. Why the media lies. There's a laundry list of reasons, but there's 5 big ones. But that's what happens. So to be healthy, train your body, train your mind. Use discernment in the information you take in. Learn how to grow food. Maybe I'll show you all my little indoor vegetable grow that I rigged up down here in the basement on the next one. Learn how to hunt or raise livestock. You know what I mean? Learn trades. Learn skills. Learn how the world works. Look at AC/DC theory. Look at mechanical theory. Look at all of these things. Spend all of your free time, or I should say most, because rest is important too, y'all, bettering yourself, furthering your understanding of the world, okay? Making yourself a more healthy person, making yourself a more disciplined person, and using your own vibration and your own frequency and creating the world that is meant for you. And I think that's the best piece of advice I can give, to stop being reliant on the system. That is the number one thing that we all have to do. So, well, guys, that's about it for me. I will have this uploaded tomorrow morning. I wish all of you a good Tuesday and a good Wednesday. Stay tuned. I'll probably be on Matt's show tomorrow night.